In this episode, we talk about the need for India to create a disaster-resilient infrastructure. We also talk about the CBI arresting 2 people in the NEET UG paper leak case. But first, we talk about water leakage at the Ram Temple in Ayodhya. Hi, I am Niharika Nanda, and you are listening to 3 Things, the Indian Express news show. Less than 6 months after the grand consecration ceremony of the Ram Temple in Ayodhya and following the city's first heavy monsoon rains, the temple trust and local administration are facing their first major challenge: water leakage at the temple and potholes on the road leading up to it. After the recent showers, waterlogging was also reported outside the newly renovated Ayodhya railway station, and authorities are now using heavy machinery to fill potholes and drain the water. The incident has led opposition leaders to hit out at the Saffron Party, including Uddhav Thackeray, who labelled the current administration as a leakage government, referring both the paper leak scandals and the water seepage at the Ram Temple. Indian Express's Maulshree Seth has been reporting on the issue for the paper, and she joins us to talk about it. Maulshree, you visited the Ram Temple yesterday morning. Tell us, what did you witness?
I was there early morning and it had been raining since 3 a.m. a day before. So what I witnessed was that as soon as I entered, there's Ram Janmabhoomi Path which leads to the Ram Temple. And just outside that Ram Janmabhoomi Path, there was a water logging there and people had to actually take off their shoes because just on this Ram Path itself, there's a locker system, so people have to take out their shoes, submit their mobiles, then only they move forward barefoot. So that is what I witnessed. I had gone there as a normal visitor there, so I traveled through the entire route as the other pilgrims were taking. So as we entered ahead, because once the water started receding, there was all the silt and the mud that was below their feet. So while they were walking barefoot towards the Ram Temple. And we saw that as soon as we entered the temple, what even other visitors were facing, that there are 3 mandaps which lead to the Garbhagriha. So just before the Garbhagriha, the mandap which is there, it's referred as the Griha Mandap or the Good Mandap. There, what one could feel was there was water dipping in from the roof there. But later on, as we spoke to the experts, and we later on found that it was not actually the roof which was leaking. It was the water which was coming through the electricity pipeline, since the work is going on the first and the second floor of the temple there. So that was the scene there from the eye of a common man.
And you spoke to the chief priest of the temple. What did he have to say about the situation?
See, the chief priest had in fact alleged that there's a leakage of water inside the Garbhagriha, and when we spoke to them, he said that there was about 4 inches of water inside the Garbhagriha 2-3 days back, when also there was a shower. So he said that this leakage was making early morning rituals for the priest very difficult. Even though he was not there on spot, he said that the priests that were performing the morning puja at that point had told him this. And he said that he has communicated to the temple authorities about this. The chief priest also alleged that there is no drainage system inside the Garbhagriha, and he said that he has gone through other temples as well of the same sect, and he has found that there is drainage system, but in this case there is no drainage system inside the Garbhagriha. That is what he alleged.
And Maulshree, you also had a word with the design and construction manager of the temple. Talk about what he had to say.
See, what the experts or the officials at the temple trust, including the design and construction manager, had to say, they said that this is not a design flaw. As far as the allegation of not having a drainage system inside the Garbhagriha is concerned, they said that it has been done after a lot of deliberation purposely, because what happens in the culture where the water which is coming after the deity is given bath, it is a holy water. So the idea was that that water should not be mixed with the other drainage system, and it should not go into the entire drainage or the sewage system. So that is why no drainage was provided inside the Garbhagriha. But a system has been made that when the deity is bathed, or the water which is coming out from that rituals, it is collected in some bowls or buckets, and then it is poured into the plants or some other place. And as far as the allegation of the dripping of the water is concerned, they said that it's not the roof which is leaking. one who visits, they get the impression that the roof is leaking, but because the work is going on the first and the second floor. Now, if we come back to the Grahe Mandap, which is just outside the Garbhagriha, that has to be a 2-floor. The roofing on it or the dome has to come on the second floor. Now, what has happened since the work on the ground and the first floor of this mandap has been completed, but the work is still going on. So it's right now it's open to the air because that dome has not been completed. So they have only put in the temporary roofing, which is of templin and the cardboards, and also just for the protection of the workers working there as well as the devotees who are coming on the ground floor. And secondly, since the work is going on the first floor as well as the second floor, which is going to be the roof, so the electrical wirings are open, the electrical conduit pipes are open at the top of it. So that is, he said that once the entire construction is completed, these issues would not come up.
And Maulshree, since the temple has not been completed yet, could you tell us what part of it is still being built?
See, ground floor was completed. Ground floor, there's Ramlala basically, who's in a child form. On the first floor, the idea is to have a Ram Darbar, which would have Ram, Sita and Ram's brother. So that entire Ram Darbar would come up on the first floor. Right now, the work is going on for this Ram Darbar along with of the top second floor, which is going to be the roof. So some part of this Ram Darbar, when I visited, it has been completed. Some place flooring is going on, some place stones are being carved in. So a lot of work is going on the entire first and the second floor right now. Though the target is to complete it by the end of this year, even though some of the officials says it's pretty ambitious, but they are targeting to complete it by the end of this year.
And we also hear that the Ram Janmbhoomi Path, the road that leads to the temple, is also facing waterlogging. So tell us, what do we know about that right now?
See, what has happened, this Ram Path is a 13-kilometer stretch, which leads to Ram Janmbhoomi and even beyond that. So on this stretch, especially before reaching the Ram Janmbhoomi Path, there are patches in between. So when there was a rainfall 2-3 days back, it witnessed road cave-in at several places, which was later on immediately covered by the local administration and all. There was again few hours of rainfall. There was again road cave-in and potholes which came in at different places. And what I saw was that authorities in some places, because there was waterlogging in the interior areas, not on the Rampath as such, but on the areas which lead to the Rampath. So interior areas, so what authorities had put in heavy machinery to draw water as well as to actually settle these patches in between road patches as well. Yeah.
And Maulshree, was this the case with the Ayodhya railway station as well?
Yes, that's true. See, there are two ways to reach the new Ayodhya railway station, which has been an upgraded railway station, a state of art. When we saw the main road, which comes from a distance while we are entering towards Ayodhya town, so that had a barricading. But the entrance, which is nearer to the Ram temple, so which is about a 2-kilometer walk, and most of the visitors or the pilgrims who are coming in or who want to take the railway route, they take this route because it is closer by, and since most of them I saw they were walking with their luggage towards the railway station. There was a huge waterlogging on this entire road till the railway station barricading. And then when we went inside this new railway station, there was water on the floor of the main campus as well. So I spoke to the local railway officials there as well as the Safai Karmcharis who actually sanitation staff which were working there and trying to clear the water. They said that it's not the roof which is leaking there, but some sealing had to be done on the gates of the station. And what they saw, that some lacuna in the design or the planning in some of the gates, that the water is coming in from those doors and it is being accumulated inside the station floor, both on the ground as well as on the first floor. So till the time it is raining, it is continuously coming in. So even if they are drawing that water out, it is continuously coming in from outside. So it was becoming difficult for them to clear it out as well. So this was the situation at the station that we saw. Yeah.
And next we talk about the need for creating disaster-resilient infrastructure. Over the past few months, several states across the country have been affected by climate-related disasters. These include landslides and heavy rainfall in Sikkim, cyclone Rimal striking Odisha, and record-breaking high temperatures in multiple northern states. And while these events have resulted in fatalities and left many people seriously injured, today we are focusing on the damage they have caused to critical infrastructure and the vulnerabilities they have exposed. From pressure on power lines due to peak energy demand, homes being swept away during the landslides, and roads being washed out or rendered impassable due to floods, the impact on essential services and community safety have been severe. Given that such climate-related events are likely to increase in the future, it is crucial for India's transportation, telecommunication, and power infrastructure to remain resilient. To discuss how this can be achieved and the necessary steps to be taken, we have Indian Express's Amitabh Sinha joining us. So Amitabh, begin by telling us how extreme weather conditions and natural disasters impact our infrastructure, like those related to power, for example.
Right. So the risk is that so we were talking about power systems, for example, the risk is when, the demand goes very high suddenly. Like any other system, your power systems have a carrying capacity. They can only tolerate that much of load. And if the demand is more than what the carrying capacity is, there is this danger of your power systems tripping, that your load is so much that your system is not able to take it. And this was mainly on account of extreme heat. So we are talking about this stress on power systems because of extreme weather event that we were experiencing. And heat is just one of the factors that puts stress, and power system is just one of the infrastructure, our critical infrastructure that goes under stress because of these kind of events. Telecommunications, for example, your transport systems, your airports, your railways, also even things like your internet availability, because they are also part of your critical infrastructure. So they get disrupted if there's something like this happens. And so supposing a cyclone comes on the Odisha coast and we see a lot of flooding that happens, and say your railway station gets flooded or your airport gets flooded, what it does is it's not just disrupts your normal transportation, but it also hampers your relief and rescue work, because that's the way. So supposing you have to distribute food packets, or you have to take medical teams to the disaster prone area, and those things get disrupted and those efforts are hampered because your infrastructure is not working. Take another example, for instance, your hospitals. Hospitals are supposed to be providing immediate emergency relief to people who are struck by disasters. But if your power system is disrupted and your power lines go off, your hospitals would not be able to attend not just those who have come in because of the disaster, but also your regular patients. So your hospitals need to have sort of backup support. So those kind of things, your critical infrastructure are at risk because of, these kind of extreme events.
And Amitabh, what kind of losses does the government typically incur due to irregular weather conditions and natural calamities in such cases?
So one part is, of course, dealing with, the disaster itself or the extreme weather event itself. So that is one part of the expenditure. The other part is the kind of things that we are talking about. So say a power system fails completely, or, communication towers, they get damaged, because of which telecommunication goes down. So there is often expenditure to be incurred on those kind of things as well. But most of these things, especially things like internet and telecommunications, also transportation to an extent, they are also, a lot of them are managed by private companies. But say things like railways, air transport, power systems, hospitals, health services, emergency services, like mostly about government incurring that expenditure. So in the last 5 years or so, that's the government data. I mean, if we look at all the states combined, how much they have spent on dealing with disasters, all kinds of expenditure put together, that they have done about, I think it's about 150,000 crores of rupees, all the states combined have spent on dealing with disasters in the last 5 years.
Okay, so the idea is that we need to work towards creating more disaster resilient infrastructure. So could you talk about that a bit and the challenges that come in the way of doing that?
So a lot of the infrastructure, the old infrastructure that exists today, obviously was not built to withstand these kind of disasters. These disasters have become much more intense, much more frequent in recent years, and the infrastructure that we built, say 20, 30, 40 years ago, probably do not have the kind of strength to withstand these kind of disasters. So we see a lot of those things happening, like waterlogging after a cyclone is a fairly routine event whenever the cyclone hits the eastern coast, also on the western coast. So those kind of infrastructure need to be retrofitted with sort of these kind of resilience features wherein you don't get waterlogged or your services are not disrupted. But also at the same time, India is building a lot of new infrastructure. A bulk of the infrastructure that will stand in 2030 has still not been built in India. So we are still in the process of building. So that this includes, say, your highways, your railway network, your buildings, your ports, airports, and all such things, large infrastructure. So we are still in the process of building these infrastructure projects. What is often talked about is that you have to build in resilience right at the time of creation itself. It's much easier to do it, also is more cost effective than retrofitting things that were created earlier.
Right. And to that effect, India had set up a coalition called the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. Can you tell us a little about that and what it focuses on?
So CDRI is an international organization set up by India along with a few other countries, but mainly backed by India. As I said, it's called Coalition of Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. So how to make your infrastructure disaster resilient. And it's supposed to act sort of a knowledge center, and it's supposed to help all the other countries globally to make these kind of critical infrastructure resilient to disasters. And it works very closely, especially with like small island states, for example, developing countries which have low capabilities and lesser resources. So how to deal with these kind of situations effectively? What are the best practices? So this is what this organization is supposed to do, right? And it is supposed to do at the international level. But obviously, within the country also, if some states want to collaborate, of course, they can do so.
And has any Indian state done that? Reached out to the CDRI?
Right. So one of the first states that actually actively reached out to do this kind of assessment of its infrastructure vis-a-vis their resilience to disasters was Odisha. And one of the first sectors they picked up was to look at their power systems, because that's the first thing that gets disrupted when very strong winds blow, or when there is a cyclone, or when there's very heavy rainfall. We see it in Delhi as well. The moment there is a heavy downpour, we see electricity goes off, not because of load, but generally because of a lot of other reasons as well. But we are talking about a disaster sort of a situation. So Odisha government, they did a sort of an assessment, and this CDRI organization that we just mentioned, they've recently come out with an assessment report of how the power system stacks up against, the potential risks from disasters. And they've reported that a lot of this infrastructure would just not be able to manage the kind of, they need to be strengthened, they need to be replaced. A lot of things need to be done to make the power systems continue to operate even in terms of cyclone, for example, so that, hospital doesn't go without power just when it is needed the most, right? So this is a first of its kind report talking about making these kind of very critical infrastructure resilient to disasters. Now, this, as I said, is just first of its kind. There are other states also in the process of doing it, but not many have started looking at it like this.
And so what are the things that can be done to make our infrastructure more resilient to natural disasters?
So it's not about not being aware of the options that are available to make your infrastructure resilient. It's just about being more aware and implementing those options that are already available. The technologies are available, and these are not very expensive as well. I think, as I said, especially when you are creating the infrastructure, these are very low cost options that can be implemented at the time of creation of infrastructure so that they are resilient. One of the risks that we don't often talk about is things like earthquakes, for example, in earthquake zones. So there are building codes, for example, how to build your houses that withstand earthquakes. Now that's building earthquake resilience into your houses, right? So those kind of things, the technologies already exist. Often it's not very well implemented. The idea now is, and the whole example of this heat wave that we started out with in this conversation, is to reinforce and to highlight the dangers that are going to only increase from these kind of extreme weather events and the disasters that result from these events, right? So since the risks are increasing, the idea is that we should be more proactive in getting our infrastructure, incorporate all these features which will, say, withstand, as I said, earthquake. For example, if you're in an earthquake zone or a cyclone, if you are in a cyclone prone area, or if you are in an area where landslides happen or a lot of rains happen, then you have to build accordingly and you have to build in resilience into those structures. So that's the whole idea.
And in the end, we give you an update regarding the NEET UG case. According to a report by Indian Express's Santosh Singh, the CBI, which took over the NEET UG paper leak case from Bihar's Economic Offences Unit, yesterday arrested 2 people from Patna. The 2, Manish Prakash and Ashutosh Kumar, had allegedly arranged accommodation for NEET UG examinees the day before the exam. Prakash's wife Archana told Santosh that she had overheard someone asking Prakash on the phone to arrange accommodation for 4 or 5 students, adding that she had no idea about the severity of the trouble he is now facing. On Wednesday, the CBI also attempted to track the prime suspect, Sanjeev Mukhya, who has been absconding from his village in Nalanda. It is suspected that Mukhya has fled to Nepal. Santosh also reported that the agency has received more information about another key accused, Sikandar Yadavendu, who has already been arrested by the Bihar police. Yadavendu also introduced 4 examinees to setters Nitish Kumar and Amit Anand. Earlier, the National Testing Agency had issued show-cause notices threatening to debar 17 candidates in Patna based on a report sent to the centre by Bihar Police's Economic Offences Unit. Last week, the Education Ministry announced the formation of an expert committee headed by former ISRO chairman K. Radhakrishnan to examine exam reforms and review the NTA's functioning. The ministry also removed Subodh Kumar Singh as NTA's chief on Saturday. You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by Shashank Bhargava and me, Niharika Nanda. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.